Okay, Shalom Aleichem everybody. I think it's amazing you all came. I started putting together this workshop because when I was a young boy I promised myself that since I didn't have any direction in the topic of bris, and I felt that I had a very difficult struggle, that it's not okay and we really should be teaching the youth. So I promised myself that at some point I'm going to create a shiur about this topic. And I waited till I was about 40 to do it, that I felt I could. And when I went into it, I started realizing that the nisyonos that I had, that's like jump change compared to what the kids go through. And it took me actually a while to acclimate myself to the issues that the younger generation all faces. What I discovered is, if you think about the world, what we're exposed to, right? So if you want to put it on a very simple, numerical way, so Pornhub, one of the latest porn sites in the world, claimed that in 2019 they had 42 billion visitors with 39 billion searches performed. Now, if you get perspective, there's 7 billion people in the world. Okay, that's 150 million a day. That's only one site.
But doesn't duplicate?
I don't know. This is the thing I took off of a site. I can't, but it could be. It's only one of the sites. And according to different numbers I looked in the secular world, we're talking about, from the age of 13, 84% of 14 and 18, 84% of males and 57% of females have viewed pornography. And since I do a lot of counseling, and I've dealt with many bachrim and many married parents, married people, I have never once had a bacher come to me, or a young adult come to me, or an adult actually, that didn't have an issue with porn in some way or another. Had watched or had some point of struggle. Different educators say the numbers are not as bad as I'm saying, so it's not 100%, it's 90%. But what that means is that there's an incredible exposure, and we have to look at, as a kehila, what are we doing to deal with this problem? Everybody feels and knows it's a problem, but what are we doing actively to solve the problem? So if we look at the chinuch that is natural, has been used basically everywhere, the chinuch starts with two basic midos, which is control and fear, right? Fear means that the Torah that's being taught is talking about the negative ramifications of being begam habris, and what that instills, as much as it, if it ever works to people, is that the person is ki'ilu so scared that they won't go near that horrible, destructive thing. And the other methodology, which is used in yeshivas very, very well, which is control, which is, I won't let you do this, I will kick you out if you do this, I will make you have this type of phone, you need to have a filter, right? Which is the midah of control. Now, if we look at what happens when we use these midos in chinuch, okay, so a few things happen. First of all, anybody who's living in fear their whole life, so the destruction of living in a situation in which a base desire, a base need, I'm being told, will bring me to the depths of hell, the worst avera in the Torah, basically makes a person into living in a situation of complete anxiety. And as we know, anxiety, either it makes you crazy or it doesn't last. Because at a certain point, the person says, okay, so that's it, I'm back. Like the Vilna Gaon says, to use yiras chet, to yira of onesh, works for a small amount of time. That's what its job. More than that, it's not supposed to work. What it also does is it reinforces what's already very strong in the world, a very negative understanding of Hashem, because basically he set you up to fail, and he's going to kill you. And so not only are you in trouble, but God hates you. Now the second midah that is used, which is control. So control, people think, is a version of teaching people, chinuch, they call it. Now, what happens if you take any human being, a child for sure too, but you take any human being, you try to control them, two things can happen. Either you break them and they become not a human being, or what happens is they revolt. Because the most powerful midah that we all have as a tzelem Elohim is the koach of bechira. And if you try to take away someone's bechira, in order for them to maintain their identity, they have to fight with you, or they have to die. Which is why what happens a lot of times is the control causes the exact opposite. And people will dafka go do things because they were so controlled. And what they're doing is actually from a healthy place, because they're saying, this doesn't belong in my life, someone telling me how to live. And the other thing that it does is, you can see this as I put up these signs, right? So I put up these signs and I mentioned the word porn. So yesterday me and Daniel were walking in Or Sameach and we gave out this sign. The guy took one look at this word. He says, no, not me, right? We have a situation where Rov Am is struggling with something, and yet, no, we can't talk about it. It's a taboo subject. No, it can't be. Because it's been ingrained as such an evil thing, as such a despised, horrible, you're going to hell thing. So what happens is the entire topic is in a sub-world. It's not on the table. And what happens with the sub-world is you can have an entire reality that you're existing on, where you don't have to deal with norms. And you can have things that are completely abnormal happening because it's all in secret and nothing's going on in the world. And outside you look like totally normal. So what I have been dealing with for the last 3 or 4 years is a world that people are holding in a very destructive way of using their energy, their sexual energy. It expresses itself in the marriages, which it looks like this permutation. Sometimes it looks like that when they get into the marriage, they're completely shut down because that's an evil thing. And then on the side, there's an incredible amount of negative things going on and all kinds of expressions, whether it's porn or whether it's hookers or whether it's other type of things, which we'll get into soon. And this is all because where they are, they're in a fake reality, that this is a certain way, and their existence, which is their kochos hanefesh, is given to the Sitra. Because you have to realize that one of the biggest limudim that porn does to you, it teaches you that you're bad. Because I have this desire, and I can feel, and I can even sometimes see that this stuff is not okay. It's bad. And I want it. I'm enjoying it. What does that say about me? And anyway, I have the chinuch of the Torah that's telling me I'm bad. So the maskana is, I'm bad. This koach hanefesh is bad. And once you've decided that you're bad, the sky is the limit. Or let's put it this way, hell is the limit. Right? You go down and down and down and down. And one of the expressions that I've seen in this is the amount of sexual abuse that exists in our kehila, in the Haredi kehila, is something which has disproportionate to the entire world. It is only equal to the Catholic Church. And I know this because people come to me all the time with the most difficult situations and they tell me, and it's clearly as a result of a lack of chinuch for 40 years, a mindset that the topic is a negative topic, and people are anyway bad, and super frustrated because they can't have an expression that's positive in their life. So what happens is, they become abusers. And even more so what happens is, I don't know if it's more so or also, is they lose their Torah, because if they're anyway having this fake life, so the rest of their from life has become fake, because this is where they're existing, all of their kochas hanefesh. So you can have people, like I know, just dealing with a kehila, I won't say the name of the country, where the Rabbanim were abusers, and the Rav himself told his son, I don't believe in God. If there was a God, he wouldn't let me do what I'm doing. So, why is this happening? If you talk about something only in a negative sense, so what you're basically saying is, you're manifesting, you're creating the negativity. If I'm saying, let's take the topic of Shomer HaBris. So how does people look at the topic of Shomer HaBris? Lishmor. There's something negative out there. There's some lion that's going to eat me. There's some terrible thing that I'm going to do. And I spend my whole time running away from it. So every time I run away from it, I give it a tremendous amount of koach. I make it existing. And I'm saying, this could happen, and therefore I need to run. But you're not running to anywhere. All you're doing is making the evil more prominent in your life and spending all of your energy not being bad. The whole concept is off. First of all, the word shmiras habris doesn't even mean that. Because the whole concept is there's a bris, there's a positive thing, you want to maintain it. Which means if you don't talk about what a bris is, what is the positive expression of your sexual energy, you haven't begun to talk about the sugya. And therefore you have nothing to protect. It's never a way of teaching ever to run away from bad. Bad is not a real thing. Bad is a block of tov. The definition of bad is there's lack of tov. So always what we should be talking about is where I want to go, where I want to become. This thing's in my way, but I'm going to go there and avoid it. And therefore the whole topic has to be changed. What we're talking about, instead of talking about negativity, we need to talking about what is the purpose, what is the goal, what does Hashem have kavanah for, that when He created this koach hanefesh, and I want to go there. And when I've decided I want to go there, then what happens is I have choice, I have power, I have bechira. And I become a tzelem Elohim, and I say, this is what I want, and this is what I don't want. And that power is unlimited. Because a person, his koach ha-bechira is the strongest koach there is existing in the world. Now, there's a problem with this whole topic, and I think it's very clearly brought up in the way that the Olam Yeshivas, as far as I know, has realized that they have to change something, and they don't know what to do. So many institutions have run to a system which is known as a 12-step system, and there's all kinds of stuff on the internet based around this system. And the approach is that it's termed as an addiction. It's a problem of addiction, and we're trying to become sober. Okay? Now, there's two big problems with this approach. I'm not even talking about the entire 12-step program as a klal, right? Whether it's effective or not effective and it helps a lot of people, that's not my topic. I'm talking about the expression in the topic of desire of sexuality. Is it effective? Now, the first thing that I think needs to be thought about is that terming it as an addiction is actually a destructive way of thinking about it. Because Hashem made this koach hanefesh in you to desire a woman constant, on purpose, because it's the fabric, the foundation of your marriage. So of course you're supposed to be addicted. You're supposed to be involved in it constantly. And calling it a negative thing because it's a constant part of my life is just a good way of saying I'm cutting off part of your body. And the other thing that's very off, and this is I'm going to pose as a question, is that the whole notion is that we're trying to have sobriety. We're trying to be sober, which means 100% no nefila, and also means in a lot of cases is that they decided to ruin the fabric of a marriage and have people pull away from their marriage in the sake of becoming sober. Okay, but even if they didn't do that, the concept of being sober, there's something very deeply wrong about that whole approach, and it's expressed in, let's say, people who take this tactic and they say, we'll have a 40-day fast. I'll pay you $100,000 and you can 40 days of no Motzar Zelav Atala, which is kind of dumb because all it means is I want something, I want this, I want more. So when I finish with this, I'll go back to this. It doesn't do anything, but there's a deeper question over here. I have a very simple question. Okay? Hashem told us the Torah, He wants to keep Torah Kol Torah Kula, right? Mitzvahs. Now you take your average whoever, okay, 13-year-old boy, however, okay, and you say to him, the halach in the Torah is you shouldn't be motzei zerav Torah. You shouldn't look at a woman, right? And if we go older, you shouldn't have a girlfriend. You shouldn't be bo'el nida, right? All kinds of stuff, right? Now, if we take the average bacher, how successful do you think he could possibly be at the age of 13 when he's an old mitzvahs? Let's be honest. Now, in my exposure, my experience, so many people, I can't even count, have told me they were exposed to pornography way before 13. 8, 4, and which means they have an incredible education, a sexual education, from the Sitra Achra, from the dark side, which is when they become a 13-year-old, they already have 4 or 5 years of training. Okay? They also have no chinuch, because most people don't talk to their kids about it, and they have an incredible drive. Now, since we're all, I think we should all be ala karka and look at the mitzias, I think we would agree, impossible. There's no way. There's no way to expect a 13-year-old to not fall. Now, I ask a dumb question. What was Hashem thinking? It's a chiyuv. It's Torah. How do we live? And this things it says in about the Atzar Zel about Torah, there will be masturbation. The Shulchan Aruch says in Even Ezer that it's the worst affair in the Torah. So okay, everybody damned to hell. From the age of 13, we're all dead. How do you understand this? So I think that to understand this is really at the key of understanding what is the work of Tikkun HaBris, and then we'll understand how silly it is, the notion about sobriety. To understand this concept, we need a little bit help from the Dvarim Nistarim, from the Mekubalim. Reb Chaim Vital said in Shari Kedusha, and it's very clear in the Ramchal, the Vilna Gaon says it a bunch of places, that when we look at the Torah, and we look at the actions of the Torah, that is shleimus. That is when Hashem is saying, this is the most perfect way to get close to me. Now we put a person in Olam Hazeh, and he has an incredible struggle to get there. What does his struggle depend on? His struggle doesn't depend on actions. It depends on midos. Because the governing factor of why people do anything is the character traits inside of them, not the actions themselves. Which means that the ikar work of a person is to work on their midos. If a person's midos are in a good place, they will not do averos. It's easy. If a person's midos are not in a good place, they will for sure do averos. Which means the entire topic from going to keep the Torah or not keep the Torah is an avoda, is a work on refining your midos. Now, if we understand that structure, the fact that a person, a 13-year-old, falls, that's totally not a problem, because it's part of his growth. In fact, he was put in that situation to learn. Hashem put him in the world and says, my dear son, I want you to get close to me. Here, go have fun. Oh, that hurt? You learned something? Great. Okay, what'd you learn? Oh, you learned that this is not a good way of being. Okay, so what would be a good way of being? Oh, well, that I didn't enjoy that. So what's up? Why is this happening? And you go inside and you figure stuff out and you start understanding what is that you actually want. What are you looking for? What makes you happy? What doesn't make you happy? What makes you close to Hashem, not close to Hashem? And that whole process is called fixing your midos. How long does it take to fix your midos? Your entire life. Now, through the process of fixing your midos, there's going to be all kinds of things that are going to happen. Sometimes you're going to have an incredible, amazing time, whether it's, you would call it Shmiras Habris, as being not masturbating and learning and feeling super connected to the world, and sometimes you'll have a nefila. You know why I have a nefila? Because it's a sign that one of your midos needs to be fixed. No one died. Hashem's not angry. Expect it. It's fine. Now take the situation and learn from it. So the question of Tikkun HaBris should never be discussed whether or not I fell and therefore I'm not sober, or I didn't fall and now I'm holy, because you could not fall and actually not have any growth in your midos. What would that look like? A person shuts himself down totally, right? When they get to their marriage, they can't make one. Because they didn't work on the midos of bris. Or they felt themselves so full of pressure that they held themselves really strong for I don't know how long. Was that actually an accomplishment? Well, they didn't do the chet. But the inside of the cells, all they did was fill themselves full of dread and didn't grow at all in what the topic is of being able to use this koach hanefesh to get close to Hashem. They didn't do it. So actually there was no movement. Nothing happened. Except destruction of that person's inner being. Right? So we never should focus. The whole point of halacha is to teach us where we're going, and when something doesn't go that way, let's look at why it happens and grow over there. So for example, people come to me, they say to me, well, if I go to this shir, will I stop doing porn? You might. It might take you 10 years. That's not the point. The point is, did you grow? Did you learn? Did you change inside? Did you advance? That's what Hashem is paying attention to, because that's the way, the whole process. And the simonim will be, what happens when I fall? Do I get some clarity? What happens in between that I have more strength? This nisayon. You might have a nisayon, and you might beat it, because you grew a step. And you know what happens then? The Yetzer Hara gets bigger, and you have a new tikkun to do, so you'll fall again. But if it's not the same thing, you can tell. You can tell myself, I'm not the same person. This issue I actually dealt with. This problem, the reason that I fell, I know what's going on over there. This is a new thing. Let's work that out. And every single time, as we'll learn, the growth, if you do the growth the right way, every single time you deal with one of these nefilos, you're actually creating your marriage. You're actually creating, because if you work on the midos, whatever made you fall is the same need that you have that is necessary to create a good marriage. The same midah that you weren't able to access, and therefore you had an expression of like wanting something like porn, or giving mozzarella, or even having a bad relationship with a woman. All of that is because something is not functioning properly inside of yourself to the right direction. And as soon as you work on that, then not only do you pull yourself out of that, but you actually put yourself in the right direction and created that midah to make your marriage better. So the whole process is actually a positive process. If you stop freaking out and you start looking at what's going on inside, you say, okay, what did I learn today? What do I need? How can I get closer to this? And you grow and you change in a positive, happy situation. And of course, if you're happy, you're much more successful. Right? If you're full of fear, dread, and pain, and sadness, that itself causes you to do all these stupid things. Right? So this is why I think the whole concept of the 40 days or the sobriety is missing the entire point. It's not the issue at all. We have to be focusing on what's going inside of me. What do I need? What do I want? And the way to do this, in my opinion, is that I think that people have a notion that they say, that taiva thing, those bad things, they're so good. And I have to fight really hard not to do that. And maybe I'll be matzliach. Okay, that's your losing game. And it's also a lie. Because when Hashem says something is asr, it means it's completely 100% bad for you. It will never be good for you in the long run. So if you think about a person, I think sometimes we think, I have this need in me and I have to fix it because it really wants bad stuff. And that's also not true. Because the core of every person, every human being, and even deeper, every Jew, is a tselem Elohim, which means their essence, they only want good things. And therefore, if you go inside of your core, and I'll teach you how to do that, you will always discover that the things that you want are beautiful, amazing, holy things. And by accessing that inner desire, you have harnessed nuclear power to now say, that's not what I want. That actually would bring me to a totally different place. So the key is, first of all, trusting Hashem. He created you holy. And therefore you can discover yourself and find your deepest desires are only to bring you things that are amazing and beautiful. Because you are a tselem Elohim. You're made in the image of God. And then realizing that the outer trappings, what the Sfarim call klipa. It means that there's a desire that I think that I'm going to get what I really want in this way. And I can look at that and say, wait a minute, I can peel that off and look at it and say, you know what, I want something else. So this is a mirage of that desire. Right? For example, if you're hungry, right? So your body needs something. So you go eat some chocolate. Oh, I thought that would be good for me. An hour later, I'm still hungry. What happened? I ate the chocolate. Oh, that's not what I wanted. I wanted a sandwich. It's the same koach hanefesh inside. You just realize what it's actually looking for. So this process is what the Svarim call birur. It's called becoming clarification. Birur haratzon. And actually the whole concept of tshuva in its correct form, not in the guilt form, but in the charata form, what it means is that I realize what I really want, and the fact that I really want this pulls me away of the negativity. And this is the process of growth. Always going inside, becoming connected to your true self, and saying, you know what? This is what I want. Is that what I want? Well, I thought it was, but it's not, and therefore I'm going to pull away from it. That is the process of tshuva, of charata. It pulls away the negativity. It's also the process of cherus, because the word cherus means being true to yourself. And this is how a person can grow. And the only way to do that is go internally and understand yourself. Which means that what we need to do is understand our deepest desire and look at it in its pirtei pratim, in its details. And the more we understand it, the more we can harness the energy and understand where would I get this desire satisfied and where wouldn't I get this desire satisfied. So that's, in my opinion, the first step. It's a limud of depth. The word depth doesn't mean it's so complicated you can't understand it, like some kind of thing like a shtickle Torah from Chaim Brisker. It means in here, more understanding myself and more listening and following the lead of my Tzelem Elohim, that I was created in the image of God, that shows me and teaches me what I actually want. And you'll be shocked. The more you understand yourself, the more brilliant you'll realize how you'll understand the panemius of not only a relationship between a man and a woman, but this is only a mashal of a relationship between us and Hashem. And you begin to understand things about our relationship with Hashem that you couldn't have understood without going in to this koach hanefesh. Right? If you noticed, the most holy song is all about relationship with husband and wife. It looks like a love poem. And the Kodesh HaKadoshim, what was there to represent the connection of Klal Yisrael and Hashem, was a man and a woman connected in an intimate way. Which means the midos, the character traits that we need in order to have a deep relationship with Hashem are the same midos we need to connect a man and a woman. And the more you get in touch with yourself, and the more you understand women, the more you understand how this beautiful union works, and then you will absolutely not have any cheshek for anything else. That's step number one. Now, step number two is that if we identify, and this is not hard, identify the reasons behind why people choose things like porn, or things like prostitutes, or things like relationships outside of marriage, you will always see that they're trying to fill a need. Now, if we learn about the topic of bris, and we understand deeply what I really want, and we go after that, without filling those needs, there's 100% failure rate. Because if you starve somebody, they'll eat garbage, even if they don't want to. Right? If anybody's starving in a midbar for 3 days, the only thing there is kosher, gross food, they'll eat it. Because you have no choice. So part of the avoda of really satisfying and working on your midos is to find out what you need today. And I always find this very funny. Guys, Bachram comes to me and says, I'm just having such a hard time. I need a girl. I'm going to go crazy. And then another guy comes to me and he says to me, Rav, I had 100 girls. They all want me. And I feel so empty. And I'm like, guys, you guys should schmooze. I mean, something's weird over here, right? And the truth is, it's not that or that, right? We need things, and the omek of our needs is in order for us to become a full-fledged Shalom Elohim. When we look at these needs, there are ways to satisfy them not in a sexual relationship, and there are ways to satisfy them in a full-fledged way in a relationship with marriage. And not only that, by building the kalim outside of a sexual experience, by doing them in a way that I find a way to do them without my wife, that actually is the key to do it with my wife. Because if you don't work them out beforehand, when you get to marriage, You're already going against the current. You're already late in the game. Which is why we have all these nisyonos as an unmarried person in order to figure this stuff out. So by the time we're married, we're ready to go. So what we need to do in order to be successful is identify those needs, whether you're married or not. Learn the skills, the midos, the character traits to fill them. Find the blocks of why you don't fill them. Heal from that. And then use those kalim to ignite your future marriage if you're not married, or create your marriage if you are married. And this is again a work of depth. Listening to yourself, understanding your needs, and realizing that they're all very holy, and you can always get them because God doesn't create a world to starve you and punish you and have you have suffering. If you are hungry, He creates food. If you need air, there's oxygen. If you need anything, it's there, it's available. So if something is missing in your life, there is a way to get it. It might take you some time, you might have struggle, but you can get it. And the only way to get it is to come internally in touch with yourself, find out what those needs are, heal them, satisfy them, and then work towards, use them to work out your future marriage. So this is what the course that I give, it's a 6-week course, and it's divided up in 6 parts. The first part is understanding the source of our desire for a woman from within, and when we listen to it and we learn a little Torah, we'll understand how deeply beautiful and amazing it is, and how you can encourage it to have that be more expressed in your life. The second and the third is about identifying the standard needs that most people talk about that pushes them to negative expressions, and then showing them that if they heal them, it's not relevant if they do watch porn or don't watch porn. It's not the point. You can be satisfied without that whole thing. Now that's work that goes beyond obviously the course. It's just an opening. Obviously people have journeys of tikkun amidos, emotional struggles, these type of things for your whole life. But it gives you an idea where to focus on. And understanding that these are the topics, not the girl, not the fact that I feel I need to look at this thing. It's your own inner world. After that, in the 4th shir, I think that the main problem with porn is underrated. The main problem with porn, people say, is the addictive part of it, or the fact that there's zera levatala, you waste seed, or looking at things you shouldn't look at. That's cute. The problem is that you're getting training from the dark side of the expression of sexuality that has nothing to do with what Hashem intended. Extremely destructive. And we have people who are being trained from a young life, they're being wired to do something that will by definition give them dissatisfaction. I actually once looked on the internet. I said, I write what sexual satisfaction. Okay? And they made a whole list of countries, very fascinating countries, who with the surveys are the people satisfied. And it's chad la'echad. You take the countries that have the worst issues with porn, they're the least satisfied. You take the old ethnic countries that they're like, simple people, they have a mommy and a daddy, and it's like, they're boring, right? Those people are super satisfied. Now, what does that teach you? It teaches you to go against what Hashem said. You're going to suffer. You're not having a good life, because He wanted you to be happy. He wanted you to be satisfied. And He said this is my Eitzah Chevra, okay?